All right, my friends, it is time for another episode of the Psychomagnetic Self-Talk series, where I teach you how to use self-talk to shift your emotional attraction and repulsion to things so that you can ultimately shift what you attract or repel with your actions. And today I want to teach you a technique that not only gives you tremendous power, but it actually allows you to feel powerful. So if you ever feel like you're a victim to your own feelings or circumstances, you feel like, you don't have the power or drive or capability to really positively impact your own life, well then this technique is for you, and I think it can really, really help. What we're going to do first here is we're going to do a quick overview of victimhood versus ownership mindset, just because in this self-talk series, that's just such an important concept we got to hit on, and then we'll get into the technique. All right. A lot of you guys I know are familiar with these ideas, but I just want them out there for historical value's sake. If someone's going to take this series fresh from the beginning. Okay. So victimhood basically is an attitude of focusing on what you cannot control. Okay. Like, technically, we are all victims to some degree. We are all subject to forces outside of our control, right? And sometimes those forces are very, very bad. We can't control, what family we're born into. We can't control, the economy we're born into. We can't control, necessarily, how people in our life, what they think, what they value, all that kind of stuff. And all those things can affect us in positive or negative ways. But a victimhood mentality is one that gives all the power in your life to those things. It's a lifestyle of blame where you say, oh, all these things outside of my control, they have the greatest determining factor on where my life goes. Basically, it's saying that, all right, me as an individual, I don't have much power because it's all everybody else's fault. It's everybody else's issue that I can't get to where I want to go. It's the world's fault, right? And this victimhood, it shows up on an internal and external level. So the external level would be like, it's that politician's fault I'm not successful, or it's the government's fault, or it's the patriarchy's fault, or it's my stupid boss, or it's my stupid parents, or blah, blah, blah. It's like naming something like that. Okay. And that's a very common form of victimhood. And you're not going to get very far as long as you keep giving your power away to people like that. But it also shows up on an internal level as well. And this is a bit subtler. So this is the person who says, I can't get myself in a better position because I don't feel like it. It's like, I've got depression. I've got ADHD. I just, it's just hard. I just keep failing. And I don't want to do these things. It's like, it's just like, basically they are a victim to their own emotions. And I'm not trying to say that there are not internal problems that are challenging. For sure there are. Of course there's mental illness and things like that, but the heart of victimhood really comes down to saying that those things, they are a dead stop block. They determine my outcome and there's nothing I can do about it. What we want to do is we want to shift into a mentality of ownership. We want to be focusing on what you can control, because if you focus on that and you maximize what you can control, well, then you're going to maximize your control over your life, right? And so external ownership says that, okay, well, all right, maybe the economy's bad. Maybe I can't do anything about that. But what would it look like if I gave 100% effort to do my best? Well, you'd probably do a lot better than the person who just says, I can't do anything. Give me my stimmy. That's it. I can't. I'm screwed. No, I'm a victim here. Can't do anything. Alternatively, the person who really goes hard and says, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to make this an opportunity. I'm going to figure out how to make this work. All right, you're going to be better off. You're going to be better off. The motto of the owner is it's better to strive and fail than not strive at all. Because maybe you decide to give it 100% and you still end up taking, on the dole from the government, but you really tried. You're at least going to be able to affirm yourself in that. You're at least going to be able to say, you know what? I really did my best. There was nothing else I could have done. Or if I was, I didn't know it. And so there's going to be a lot more peace and satisfaction with yourself knowing that, as long as you've got a good mindset and you're not just beating yourself up. You're like, I'm a failure. See my the one about dignity, which is the last one in this series, if you struggle with that kind of stuff. And then internal ownership says that, all right, maybe I don't have 100% control over my thoughts and feelings, which you don't, but you do have some control. And if you can learn how to use that control well, then you can improve your mindset, you can improve your feelings, you can then ultimately improve your actions. That's the whole point of this series, is to give you greater control over what you do, right? And it's the same thing too. It's like, all right, people who feel victims to their own reactions. It's like, oh, I just had a craving. Like there was nothing I could do. I was just on autopilot. Yeah, maybe in the moment, in that particular moment, there was nothing that you could do. Maybe you were on autopilot, you weren't aware. And yeah, I get that. But you can shift your reactions over time, right? And this is where the Metascript method really comes in. That's why I keep plugging it. So check out the Metascript method by clicking the link in the description below. It teaches you how to change your reactions so that you don't need to be a victim to them. You can actually recondition your brain so that when something comes up, you can have a different response than the victim mentality, rather than just rolling over and doing the crappy thing. The big challenge here is that when people try to shift into a mode of greater ownership, they run into the issue that like their life gets harder at first, it seems like, because the reason why people like to be a victim is because it frees them from responsibility. If you're a victim, then you're not expected to do anything. And you don't need to put any pressure on yourself. And this is something that people like. That's why people like being victims, because they don't want to have responsibility. They don't want to have the expectation to behave in a better way. They don't want to have that kind of pressure on themselves. And when they start trying to take ownership and they look at it, like they run into some problems. Like they feel maybe a sense of ontological shock where they realize, oh shit, I've spent years as a victim making my life crappier than it needed to be. And now I just recognize that I've wasted years of my life. And like, what the hell am I supposed to do with that? Right? Along with that is a feeling of stress and weakness where they say, okay, yeah, I want to try and take control, but I don't even know how. I feel so weak. And this is where this technique that I want to teach you guys comes into play. This is what I call command mode. And the reason for it is like to make you feel powerful. It's to make you help you take ownership from a position that actually feels like you have direct and immediate control over yourself in a way that is useful. Okay. And it takes a little bit of practice, but as you start doing it, you'll realize, wow, this is actually extremely useful. Now, before we talk about it exactly, there is one caveat. Like you have to be at least somewhat optimistic about your opportunities in life. Like if you're a straight nihilist, it's not going to work. And so like you have to be somewhat optimistic, like believe that like if you take ownership, your life will improve. And so if you struggle with that, then check out my anabolic optimism guide. That's another free guide I got in the link below. So just putting that out there because I know some of you guys are just so down on yourself and you're like, all right, even if I take ownership, nothing's going to change. You got to change that mentality. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get anything done. How's this work? Well, basically what you do is like, here's the visual. You don't need to use this visual always, but you can use it at first to kind of get a feel for it. Like you want to imagine that you are like a gigantic, like I think of myself as like a gigantic battle star, like gigantic like ship or, giant mech hurtling through space. And inside of me is a crew of all these different faculties. It's like I've got like the emotional department. I've got, these like the instincts. I've got like my body. And it's like you think of them as all like, different departments inside of this big ship. And at the top, on the bridge, right inside your head, there's the commander. And that's like, you can call that the ego. You can call that the terminal self, whatever you want to call it. But it's the part that needs to sort through all of this other stuff and be the leader. And that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put ourselves into a state of leadership internally. And when we can find that power, then it makes it so much easier. And so the general technique is like you act like the commander of your own ship. And what it practically amounts to is forcing the other parts of your system, the other parts of your psyche to report in. So that's one baseline technique here is you say, all right, if you're feeling stressed, you're feeling victimized, you're feeling like you want to take control, feeling like you want to feel more powerful, then first thing is, all right, status report. And you go through and you make all the systems give you a report. It's like, all right, okay, sir, so the guys in the body department, they say, all right, you're a little hungry and you're a little bit tired. The guys in the emotional department say, all right, you're feeling a little bit of stress and discouragement. And you've also got a bit of a nihilistic attack on the lower sector who's saying that you should just give up and throw the towel in. But we still have other guys in the emotional department saying, listen, we can push through. Like just force the parts of your psyche to report. Now, this alone is going to put you in a position of power, because when this stuff just kind of is flowing through you, just abstractly, and you're kind of in it, you're in the stream. It's the difference between being like in the stream and above the stream. And if you want to be above the stream, that's the commander mode. And all you have to do is observe. You have to separate the observing part of you from the experiencing part of you. And just by forcing these parts to make a report to you, as if you were the commander of the ship, then that creates the separation, and it gives you the beginnings of the control, of the internal leverage to start adjusting things. One of the most useful ways to do this is when you have some kind of troubling emotion. You know, you can imagine it as like you're the commander and you call that person up to the command deck and you force them to report. That's what you do. You say, all right, what are you feeling? Like if you're dealing with a craving, you put the craving on the stand and be like, all right, what do you want? It's like, I want to do the bad thing. You know, I want to watch porn. I want to do drugs. I want to just, goof off and not do any work. And he's like, okay, why do you want to do that? Why do you think that's a good idea? And they force it to explain themselves like, because it'll feel good. And when you like engage in your self-talk from this position of power, it's so much easier to just like call that out for the bullshit that it is. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go ahead and say no, and we're going to go move on, and we're going to see if someone else has a better option here. You call in your rationality and be like, all right, rationality, what do you think is a better move here? It's like, well, Captain, I think a better move would be for us to, maybe take a quick walk, clear our brain, and then maybe we get a little bit of work done. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be way happier if we do that. And it's like, okay, that's it. That's easy, right? You can do this in a lot of different scenarios. One is a craving. Another one is any time that you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you just force yourself to list the things that are worried, right? Like what you're worried about. Like, so, for example, like I'll do this with, like if I'm feeling stuck on a piece of content, okay? Like, I'm dramatizing this to like give you the image of like, commander and crew, but this is essentially what happens. It's like, say I'm feeling like I'm working on a piece of content and I find myself just getting frustrated. I'll tune in and I'll be like, all right, status report, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, Captain, everyone in the emotion department is saying that like this feels helpless and stupid. We're like totally stuck. I'm like, okay, is it actually hopeless? Guys in the rationality department say, no, it's not actually hopeless. I'm like, well, okay, then we're not actually stuck. She's like, affirmative, sir, that does seem to be the case. Well, what are our options? Options, sir? What do you mean? Well, have you brainstormed the options of how we can solve this content issue in front of us? No, sir. Well, then get to work doing that, right? It's like, it's just having a conversation with yourself where you're separating out the pieces so that you can take a leadership role. And usually it's just basic leadership you need, like simple, rational, common sense stuff. And if you do that, well, then you're going to feel an immediate response, even just when you can force like parts to respond to you. It's super, super powerful. It's in itself a power play. And when you recognize that you at least have the power to make parts talk to you and tell you what they're doing, then that gives you a lot of confidence in shifting things. And you don't necessarily need to even understand everything perfectly. Sometimes there might just be like an abstract sense of stress. It's like, oh, we're stressed, sir. Why? I don't know. We just are. Well, you can counter that and be like, okay, well, then that's dumb. We're going to calm down then because clearly there's no obvious issue. Right? And that's just the way things roll sometimes. So hopefully that gives you guys a decent model for how to work inside of yourself and establish greater levels of ownership, at least on the internal level, because all external ownership is just an extension of internal ownership. And once you can get a hold of your own emotions, then you're going to be way ahead, right? And this is particularly true in any kind of thing that's challenging, like we were talking previously about like dealing with like female shit tests and that sort of thing. With something like that, like, it can be hard emotionally. But once you learn how to take ownership of your emotions, learn how to take command of your emotions, it's way easier. right? And you don't even need to be perfect with this stuff to start getting significant boons. So that's what I have for you guys to get today on this topic. So if you liked it, please subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Leave a comment for the algorithm. Let's get to 100,000 subs. And I'll see you all in the next one.